Good evening, everyone. Today's media landscape permits individuals to access richer information than ever before. In a year where the news has been dominated by incidents like COVID-19 and the US presidential election, social media channels are often the choice for many when you compare with traditional news sources. However, uncurated digital content can be a powerful tool which can at times be dangerous to sway opinions. As a result, we've often heard come of the words misinformation or fake news during the recent past. We at the Internet Society Sri Lanka chapter are exploring this topic deeper. And today's webinar, which we titled Building Trust in Social Media, Fact-Checking Experience and Challenges, is the first in a series of webinars that we're going to hope to run through with this topic in mind. So thank you very much for joining us today. So I'm privileged to introduce the panelists today, and I think we can get them online now. We have Mr. Harish Nair, who is managing editor for Crescendo India. Welcome, Harish, all the way from India today. Good evening.
Thank you.
Then we have Mr. Nalaka Gunawardene, a well-known media analyst and commentator. Good evening, Nalaka, and welcome on board. Then we have Ms. Anisha Bandaranaike, assistant analyst at Verité Research. Good evening, Anisha.
Good evening. It's good to be here. Thank you.
And we have Mr. Imran Furkan, who is an independent media commentator and CEO of Tresync Australia. Good evening, Imran. I think you're on mute.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
And we have Mr. Kasun Kumarage, team lead FactSeeker. Kasun, yes, we have Mr. Kasun Kumarage, team lead FactSeeker for Sri Lanka Press Institute. Good evening, Kasun.
Good evening.
So once again, thank you very much for being with us this evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I'd first like to start off this webinar by just giving everyone a chance for around 1 minute, basically to introduce their background in relation to our topic today. So I'd like to start with Harish and to describe like your role in terms of fact checking and so on. Over to you, Harish.
Okay, thank you, Lasith, and Happy New Year to everyone. And I would also like to thank Lasith and all the other organizers again for putting us together so that we can share our experiences. My name is Harish, and I'm the managing editor for India, Crescendo. So Crescendo is an IFCN affiliated fact-checking organization. We started out in India now, but we are more like a South Asian fact-checking family now. So we fact-check not only in India and Sri Lanka, now we are fact-checking in Bangladesh and Myanmar as well. And we are an independent and unbiased, non-partisan fact-checking organization. And we fact-check on different topics related to, for example, health, politics, or social or communal context. And since our operation started in Sri Lanka, right, since September 2019, we have done more than 1,000 fact checks in 3 different languages that are Sinhala, English, and Tamil. And I'm very pleased and very happy to represent Crescendo here, and I'm looking forward for a very meaningful and insightful interaction with all the panelists and the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Harish. And over to Nalaka. I think you don't need much of an introduction basically, but then please, in terms of this topic, I think you've done a lot of work. So yes, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Internet Society Sri Lanka, of which I too am a member, for bringing us together. My original training was as a journalist, science writer, and science communicator. In these 3 areas, I've been active for the past 30 years in various capacities, as a reporter, as a feature writer, radio and television host, as a social media personality, media trainer, and media researcher. For the past few years, I have been particularly concerned about the rising levels of disinformation and what can be done about at individual user level and collectively as a society. So I was among the first, I believe, to propose and call for domestic indigenous fact-checking services. And I was delighted that 3 years ago, factcheck.lk emerged in 2018 as an initiative, Verité, initiative of Verité. So I have been a cheerleader for fact checkers. I've been urging every journalist and every communicator in news media to fact check and responsible for the information that they produce and disseminate. So it's in that context that I'm joining today. And also, as a media analyst, I'm well aware of the limits of fact. Again, I'll touch on it later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nalaka. And over to Anisha. Good evening, Anisha. So,
Good evening.
I think Nalaka mentioned about Verité and fact check. So you can elaborate as well. Wait.
Yes, so thank you for having me here today. I am one of the managers of FactCheck, which is Verité Research's fact-checking platform, as Nalaka mentioned. And honestly, thank you, Nalaka, for all of the support that you and IMS have given us in launching our platform. We are a platform that started in September 2018. We specifically fact-check only the statements of high-level decision makers in Sri Lanka. So that's people like MPs or high-level public sector bureaucrats. And our main goal is to hold those high-level decision makers accountable for the statements that they make. And so we also have, like Crescendo, have done fact checks on a variety of subjects: legal, economic, social, political. I can talk about that later a little bit more. And we try to do statements that are of high public interest and that are relevant and educational. We also do fact checks that are very deeply researched, and we provide a lot of analysis on them. So it's a bit of a slower process than the typical fact checking you get on social media, which again, I can talk about the sort of advantages and disadvantages of that later.
Okay, thanks, Anisha. And over to Imran. So again, someone who on local media prominently visible as a commentator. Imran, over to you.
Yeah, hi everybody. So what I do is I work with organizations and individuals to help them understand and comprehend digital disruption and how technology will affect their different industry. Over the last few years, I've run SLPI, the Sri Lanka Press Institute, and Classcom, which is the IT BPO trade chain in Sri Lanka, which gives me a unique insight into the interplay between media and technology, and how this is changing over the years. And I'm obviously as concerned as Nalaka is in terms of how the interplay between this is helping to polarize society and beyond that as well. And I'm working with whoever I can really to kind of make sure that we understand and fight this epidemic of or actually a pandemic of misinformation, so that we have the best part of digital can be harnessed by society. So that's what I'm doing currently. Thank you.
And so the Sri Lanka Press Institute, I think, has a pivotal role when it comes to the role of journalists in this. And I think it's great that we can join on board SLPI with Kasun. Over to you, Kasun.
Hi, good evening all. I am Kasun, representing Sri Lanka Press Institute's fact-checking team. Sri Lanka Press Institute is a media organization which is working with media institution and journalists. With relation to the media, we had many observations regarding mis and disinformation, which are spreading around. As we all agree, debunking fake news is a timely need, so we started with journalists by raising awareness and training them about fact-checking. Later, we have started our own fact-checking team at SLPI, and I'm leading the team. So glad to be here today with all other activists and veterans who are engaging with fact-checking. It is good to have a platform for sharing experience, and good to and thanks to have me here. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So we'll go on to our first set of discussions. Basically, when you look at what's the role the Internet Society plays here, so we, as the Internet Society, there are a number of projects that we involve in, and the project that we are currently engaging in, as in this webinar, is actually to look about how we can create a community of fact check community of individuals who are more aware of the fact check process as responsible citizens. So in that league, I think one of the things that someone may wonder is whether really misinformation is a big issue, or is it something in terms of Sri Lanka or in terms of the world, what sort of issue, how much of an issue it is. So I think Nalaka, probably with your wide experience, you could start off the first round of discussions by just talking to us about how much of problem misinformation is.
Thank you, Lasith. It is a big problem. It is a growing problem, already big, getting worse, getting bigger. And last year, 2020, I think is where we all realized how much of a negative impact it can have if this goes on without intervention. But let me just for context setting clarify one or two. Disinformation itself is not new. It's been around for as long as humans have communicated. And lies, rumors, speculations, conspiracy theories can be traced back to thousands of years. And the news media, which have existed for 500 years, have also always been accused, not all of them, but some of them, for spreading fabrications and unverified news and so on. So what's new is in the past 20 to 25 years, as the internet spread worldwide, the ability for disinformation to be narrated and spread became within the reach of most people. All internet users, in theory, can today originate and publish anything with a few keystrokes. And that's where the problem became much more widespread. So today, a lie can be originated and published and then uncritically shared very, very quickly and very, very far and wide. There are two terms that are used interchangeably. I again want to clarify, disinformation is misleading or false information that is created and disseminated with deliberate intent of causing harm. The person doing so knows that it is false. Then misinformation is when someone receives that piece of disinformation without realizing that it's false, shares it through whatever means available to her. Could be Facebook, WhatsApp, or other means, or even mention it verbally. That is misinformation. In my view, the real problem is disinformation. The origins of falsehoods and lies and conspiracy theories. What can be done about it? One of the strategies to deal with disinformation is fact. It's a proven strategy for countering disinformation in politics, in economics, in public health, and in other aspects of everyday life. Now, reputed news organizations in other countries, they actually have in-house fact checkers, so that whatever their reporters, producers produce before it's disseminated, the fact checkers have a role of verifying it, asking the question. But as far as I know, the media in Sri Lanka has not had that sort of dedicated fact. So enter the independent third-party fact checker, which we now have, and they could be academic groups, they could be non-profits like Crescendo, they could be international news agencies like AFP, which has a fact-checking service that covers Sri Lanka. They could be think tanks like Verité. And also there is a global network, international fact-checking network for IFCN, that since 2015 has been networking more than 100 fact-checking entities by now. And the IFCN provides a set of common shared principles about which we can discuss later, giving the values for the global fact-checking community. Fact-checking community is growing in number, growing in activity, but unfortunately, disinformation is growing much faster, both in volume as well as in diversity. Now, what can be done about it? The last year's experience, I want to briefly touch on that. Last year, 2020, was not only the year of the coronavirus of COVID-19, it was also the year of infodemic. The World Health Organization, WHO, called it the infodemic, that is disinformation pertaining to or any aspect of relating to any aspect of COVID-19. And the WHO, from the very top, from the Director General himself and other officials, kept on reminding us and cautioning the world that disinformation is getting in the way of controlling and containing the pandemic. And it's costing lives. So it's been a very serious matter in terms of controlling and responding to the pandemic. How much disinformation about COVID is around? Well, there is no way of counting it because it comes from many languages, from many societies. But IFCN, the International Fact Checking Network, in January last year launched what they call the Coronavirus Fact Alliance. And they started mobilizing their international fact checker members to do fact check and feed into a database. So by the end of the year, by December, late December, there were more than 9,000 fact-checked corona-related falsehoods or disinformation in that data. Now, there could be a lot more that hasn't yet been fact-checked, but at least over 9,000 corona-related information that's been investigated and clarified, and many of them debunked. That includes, I'm afraid, a few dozen from Sri Lanka. And across a broad range of topics, from misleading claims about how the disease itself spreads, about various false or dubious cures for COVID-19, then distortions or lies about the government's responses, including quarantine arrangements and other precautions, misleading the public and getting in the way of disease control, scaremongering about deaths related to or resulting from COVID-19, false dietary advice, for example, not just in Sri Lanka but also elsewhere. There was this false information during the first wave of COVID about bakery products being harmful, and now more recently of fish. Eating fish can make us exposed to COVID-19. Both these are wrong, and they have been debunked by medical research. And there have been other distortions about repatriation of Sri Lankan overseas. So all that has shown how much of a problem this is. The time when the government, when society, when the healthcare system is struggling to respond to this massive public health challenge. And besides COVID, there were other basis for disinformation also, like related to example, general election. So political disinformation is another big problem. So I stop there I just wanted to, because the problem continues into one, as does the pandemic. So Dr. Anil Jasi, former Director General of Health Services, just a couple of days ago, he was quoted in newspapers as saying this, and I quote from the Daily Mirror report. Various information about COVID-19 is being published in the media and social media. What needs to be done is to get and provide more accurate information. To control this virus, it is necessary to provide accurate information. He said it, I can only reiterate it. Right information will give us the edge over COVID-19. We need to be especially committed to accuracy and fact in this critical time. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Nalaka, for those thoughts. And I'd just like to connect the same question and extend it over to Imran. Just talking about the year, if you look at the year 2020, Imran, what was apart from COVID? Which obviously was. What else was impactful? Can you just maybe run through some of the more in terms of misinformation?
Yeah, I think the key part, is to see which years, the special events that trigger massive, misinformation and disinformation campaigns. Obviously, Sri Lanka had an election, a very important parliamentary election. The US had a presidential election, and also in terms of the, pandemic itself, it served as a football that was used for various purposes. So I think a confluence of many factors came into play, and that's what made 2020 a really, a very blockbuster year, if it were, for disinformation and false information. And also, I think before looking at 2020, I just want to cast a kind of a glance to the past, where we, in terms of how we came, how the gatekeepers of information in Sri Lanka, particularly. Has changed, right? For a long time, it was print media. That was a few reasonably responsible publishers, right? They had their partisan views, but in terms of actually publishing false information, a lot less, right? But obviously, that has got worse as competition has gone and margins have eroded. Then we had two state broadcasters. We had just basically one, state radio station for many decades, and then we had two state broadcasters, and now this has proliferated into multiple television channels, again with their own partisan views. But I think this year what you have seen is an outright use of by media of false information, right? And then that, I think, has been a really concerning aspect for quite a few of us who love media, and also who see it as very important gatekeepers for information. So as they say, by the time a truth comes out the door, just staggers out the door, a lie has gone several times around the world. And digital media has really helped this kind of proliferate even in Sri Lanka in a very big way, right? There have been studies that show that by the time the real information reaches, say, 1,500 Twitter users, it takes us 6 times as much time to reach 1,500 users as per a falsehood. And with the use of messaging platforms, which have become very ubiquitous, and also the fact that so many of our population was at home, for in curfew kind of situations for multiple months. I think all of these things have come together to kind of create a very combustible situation, which in turn has further eroded any trust or whatever was left in terms of traditional media, and also even digital media as well. I think that is something that we need to worry about going forward to 2021, because when it comes to actually fighting a pandemic, we need institutions to be trusted, individuals to be trusted, decision makers to be trusted. And this is my concern in terms of what's going on in the the kind of information pandemic that we seem to have going forward, right? Best example would be Dr. Jayewardenepura in terms of being a trusted voice in terms of information, and then he disappears, and then you have all sorts of other people coming through and making various comments on on things like burials and cremations and so on. And the fear is you need the support of numerous communities and ethnic groups and all these sort of things for the vaccination campaign to be successful, right? One of the reasons why Sri Lanka has one of the most successful vaccination campaigns in the whole world really is because of the fact that our institutions like our doctors, our hospitals, our scientists were trusted. And today that trust is being eroded sometimes by themselves, by making contradictory and very political statements as they're doing, and also at the same time by the amplification of falsehoods by traditional media and them not being held to account. Right now, even in the US, say for example with Fox News, right, they have started broadcasting, certain information to correct information that they did during the presidential campaign, because of the threat of defamation by the manufacturers of voting machines, right? I mean, you think that somebody, in a country which values the First Amendment, the country that has, very little restrictions on media, nobody will be able to, have an impact on them, but apparently the threat of litigation has done that. But with Sri Lanka, something else I find very interesting is we don't have a rating system for our electronic media that is credible, right? So now today, the way I see, the way I notice, what news channel is more credible in terms of coverage is I just ask, I look at the people working at my own home who keep switching channels, and the amount of time that they spend on a particular channel tells me that in their view, the legitimacy of that channel seems to have increased. So I think something that we have failed to do, at which other countries have done well, is at least track traditional media, particularly television and radio, in terms of their ratings, because that would give an impact, on how much reliable they were. So sometimes we are ascribing too much of influence to, for example, certain private television channels that may not necessarily have that reach that people think they do. Because other than the state media channels, really, in terms of distribution, that is something that some of the channels don't have in terms of the private media. So there is no even credible information as to the reach of private and other media. So it's very difficult to make important decisions as to the kind of action plan that we need to take in 2021 going forward because of a lack of information. I think the bigger problem in Sri Lanka is a lack of credible information on every aspect of society. And even in sort of economic aspects, we've seen the delay of our our second and third quarter GDP numbers to December, which now the last bastion of credible information may also be compromised or seem to be compromised. So I think the bigger problem for me in terms of is the lack of information for decision makers in terms of what is effective. And also the undermining of institutions and of society, which is critical in the fight of COVID and the rollout of the vaccine next year, right? And I think that is what's worrying me this year. The fact that we seem to be undermining the same institutions whose support we need, community organizations, entire ethnic communities that we need to make this rollout of this vaccine a success, because that seems to be a key, at least internationally, in terms of fighting this COVID.
Yeah, I think everyone's looking forward for the vaccine. There are questions on mainly this payment. Today it was informed that India, for example, has coming up with it. They were approved it. Okay, we do allow questions onto to our discussion, and if you are watching us on Facebook or YouTube, you can just directly type your questions onto the chat. We actually had several questions posed by participants who registered for this. And one of the questions, I'll actually giving the opportunity to our next panelist to answer this during his discussion. So Harish, so while just talk to us through the fact-checking process and how you do it, and also maybe to talk about how you select fact-checkers at Crescendo. You can just introduce and go to the question later on. Is okay. I think you are on mute.
So as elucidated by Nalaka and Imran, they have very clearly highlighted what are the problems that we are facing, not on a very global level, not only in context of Sri Lanka, but it's a global problem. the terms like infodemic that have emerged in 2020, the impact that coronavirus had, or any elections that are having. So this is exactly where Crescendo comes in. This is the role that Crescendo plays. The gentleman also highlighted how the credibility of the media is getting lost somewhere. So that is why we try to build a credible and reliable source for people to get their informations verified, and also to get themselves informed and prevent themselves from any harmful effects of disinformation. As Nalaka had clearly cited out, that difference between misinformation and disinformation. Disinformation is the one that can cause imminent harm, and that has long-lasting impacts on the society or on some community. For examples like the communal claims. Since we started later in Sri Lanka, but we had previous experiences in India, as we always sit on a pile of gunpowder since 1947, and any small spark can trigger a huge riot or anything on a very large level. So we saw that communalism has been a problem now lately in Sri Lanka, especially after the Easter bomb blasts and all. So we put all our experiences there in first of all identifying the misinformation, the disinformation rather, and also to stop it before it spreads to such an extent that it will cause some kind of damage. And as mentioned by Nalaka, IFCN had this alliance of fact checkers. We were also part of the alliance, and I can assure you that there were more than a dozen stories that went up from Sri Lanka. In fact, there were a lot of stories, and as some of the examples that were highlighted, like about bakery items and government responses, Ayurvedic cures that got approved by WHO. So we got a lot of such claims regarding coronavirus that could have been very misleading. And also, the thing is that when such events happen, when there is parliamentary election, or when there is a pandemic-like situation like we are facing right now, the thing is that the misinformation travels in such a high speed. The speed at which travels is very high, and not only we have to debunk it, we have to debunk it in a very limited period of time, so that we can stop it before it spreads to an extent where it will be of no use to stop it. For example, conspiracy theories. And now, since we are discussing about vaccines, there have been a lot of misinformation about vaccine. Since we have one example from India, actually, from 2017, we had MR vaccine drive that started in India, and there were misinformation and rumors. Not only on social media, this misinformation and rumors also emanate from people, from the local people also. Like there was a claim that this vaccine is going to render the Muslim population impotent, and this claim discouraged people to such an extent that the health officials and the health workers were finding it difficult to get into Muslim majority areas and get them vaccinated. And they had to ultimately take help of Muslim leaders to convince the people that there is no propaganda behind this, and there is no agenda behind this, and the vaccines are completely safe. But now, as we move on to 2021, we have a new challenge. We have coronavirus. We have again the situation with vaccine, and again we see that the similar kind of claims are coming up, and as it has been put rightly, even politicians, media houses sometimes don't verify information, and because of that, people get misled. So at Crescendo, we strive to provide a very independent and unbiased fact check of these kind of misinformation, so that people get the right context of the things and they don't get misled. And as far as the process is concerned, So we have, as Nalaka had mentioned, IFCN's code of principles. Our process is largely based on code of principles. Like, first of all, it is transparency of sources. Then you have non-partisanship and unbiased fact check. That is your writing. The way you write, it should not be biased and partisan. And the funding, that your organization is not getting funded by any political organization or social religious organization. Methodology has to be clear. Whatever we do, we use complex tools or we use simple tools. Whatever tool we have used or whoever we have contacted, whoever we have got the information from, or however we have got the information from, has to be there in the article. And then the final one is an open and fair correction policy, because we are all human beings, and it's very common for us to make errors. And but the thing is that we have to publicly acknowledge those errors, and we have to correct it with the right context. So these are the things that we follow very religiously in our processes. So if we talk about process, we can divide it into four broad parts. Actually, first thing is monitoring. Monitoring different social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp, etc. So you monitor social media for viral content that is going viral, how people are reacting to it, and then you look for signals in those kind of content, signals that suggest that this information could be fake. And a fact checker would monitor the social media. For example, he can use some tools like TweetDeck for Twitter or Proctangle for Facebook and all. And he can search for these signals that suggest that this information might be fake and it needs to be verified. And from there, he will do some preliminary research on that. So this is the part of identification, that to identify whether it is fake content, it is a fake claim or not, because most of the times it happens that it's just an opinion, or it is just a satire, or it was written in a sarcastic manner, and the intention of the person who might have published the information might not be to mislead. So the thing is that we have to check that whether there is a fake claim in it, and and then we have to assess the impact of that claim. As I told you, for example, if you take for example communal claims, they target a community, a particular community, and they have a great impact on different communities. Then political claims have impacts on the reputation of the political parties, and also can influence the elections in some or the other way. And then you have medical claims also, which are very impactful, as we have seen in the case of COVID-19 recently, that people were raising a lot of questions about the testing process because of a lot of misinformation about testing, then misinformation about the virus itself, a lot of misinformation that originated outside of Sri Lanka came into Sri Lanka, and it was then translated into Simala, Tamil, and all, and then it was disseminated in the community. And so these kind of things have a huge impact on people who might be either discouraged to seek treatment if they are having symptoms, or they may go for more hazardous things such as self-medication and all, that could be really dangerous. And also there were misinformation that gave false hope to people, which IFCN had identified that the false hope are equally dangerous as disinformation. So this is basically the process that we follow. We monitor, we identify, after that we do research, then we have a follow-up on that research. Now, in research we get leads, we follow up the leads, we dig in deep, and then after our research is complete, it goes through an editorial phase where the editor cross-checks and verifies the facts and everything that is mentioned in the report, and if it is okay, then it gets published, otherwise the cycle gets repeated. And now coming to the question from the audience, that how we select fact checkers. So we have a very comprehensive and very stringent selection policy. First of all, we see the aptitude of the person, and the experience is counted, but we mostly look how he is good with technology, because fact checking involves usage of a lot of tools, and also then the biasness of that person. Now, how whether he is inclined to certain form of thinking or certain form of approach, and also we get them to sign a non-partisan contract also, stating that they are not aligned with any political organization before they come in. So it is a very comprehensive analysis that we do, and we have their assessment first before recruiting them. We try to train them. We see whether they are trainable, whether they are good in adapting technology, tech savvy. They are good in adapting to using new tools and all. And after that, they are recruited in the fact-checking community, Crescendo's fact-checking community. And after that also, we keep regular training sessions, just like you have in your IT companies. Anytime new technology comes in, we have to train our fact checkers, and then also regarding not only about technology, also about behaviors and all, to track coordinated behavior in dissemination of misinformation and everything.
Okay, Harish, thank you. So I think, all right, I'll move to Anisha. Anisha, so I think as initially Nalaka mentioned, I think Verité has been a trailblazer in the local scene when it comes to fact-checking initiatives. So can you describe like how you have Verité has gone through this and what you have done up to now?
Yes. So as Nalaka said, Verité started. Verité was the first local platform to start fact checking. So Crescendo and FPR international organization. So Verité's fact check is the first local platform that does this kind of in-depth fact checking. And so we, as I said earlier, our main goal is to fact check specifically these high-level decision makers, and part of the reason for this is kind of explained in what both Nalaka and Imran said about the lack of trust or the degradation of trust in institutions. We believe that these high-level decision makers and the institutions that they represent are we hold them to a higher standard. We expect them to speak the truth and provide us with credible information, and we find that in recent times that is not necessarily the case. So we recently did a fact check on the chief epidemiologist, Suwathathu Samaravira, about whether COVID has reached community spread or not, and we found that what he said was false. He said that there is no community spread, and so we find that with statements like these, trust is being degraded by public have lost trust in these institutions. And so because of that, and things in the past, similar instances in the past, we want to check these high-level decision makers who are expected to be trustworthy, and so we want to hold them accountable for the statements that they make. So our fact checks are a little different to what Crescendo does. We do in-depth research, and we try to present very detailed explanations for the kinds of things that are being said, and there are a variety of different areas, but that we typically tend to do fact checks on statements that have a deeper argument or are trying to convince people of something about the economy or about the legal systems. So we want them to be educational, and so some of the examples of things that we've done. We've recently checked a statement by Sajid Premadasa on tax revenue. We've done fact checks on the 19th Amendment and the 20th Amendment, presidential immunity, COVID, all of those different topics. And because of the types of checks we do, our process is a little bit different, right? So we have to we put a lot of time goes into kind of researching what is being said, looking at the different sources, and trying to evaluate them and provide like a convincing and replicable sort of fact check, so that the people can read it and feel like they too can go and look at these sources and come to the same conclusions. And so we also try to follow the IFCN's principles of unbiased and transparent fact checking. So we go through kind of a long process, like I can explain our process a bit. Similar to Crescendo, we have this monitoring and statement selection period. And so we mostly monitor our statements by looking at the print media because of, like I said, because we're checking high-level decision makers, the statements that they make, we're looking at tend to get reported in the press. And that's where the people, encounter them the most. And so we mostly look at the print media, but we also try to get statements from, we have a submit a claim section on our website. So sometimes we also get claims from the public to check something that maybe someone said on social media or on TV or that kind of thing. But our main monitoring is print media. We then, because of the in-depth fact checking we do, we can't check every single statement. So we have to sort of filter our statements and prioritize what we want to do. And so we do that based on availability of data, the relevance to the public, and the educational value of the statement. And I would say actually that's one of our challenges, is that because of the in-depth fact checking we do, it's a bit difficult to do every single statement. So we have to prioritize. Then after the monitoring period, we do the research and writing. So we first try to understand the deeper argument being made in a statement, because often when you have a statement made by an MP, that they're trying to provide some kind of argument. So we try to understand the deeper argument, and then we try to check that, as opposed to just checking, just the numbers or just the words that are being said. And we collect all of the data we can on that statement. We approach every statement from like an unbiased perspective. So, we don't go in thinking, this is going to be true or this is going to be false. It's just, this is a statement that's interesting. Is there data available? And then if there's data available, we collect all of that and then see is there something to prove that this is true, or is there something to show that this is not true? Is there a lack of data? All of those things. And then we do a detailed fact check on, we write up a detailed fact check. It goes through multiple layers of review by our editorial board, and fact checkers work one-on-one with our editor-in-chief to kind of make sure that what we're saying makes sense and is replicable. And especially the sensitive nature of what we do and the people we check, we want to make sure that every fact check is, there are no mistakes, no errors. Yes, and then it's checked, and if it's not up to standard, if the data is not up to standard, if any of that, it goes that whole process again. Yes, that is our process. And
okay, so thanks, Anisha. We'll just move on to Kasun. So I think Kasun, you are also involved in fact checking, but as the SLPI, you're how you perform it and how your role is slightly different. So maybe you can elaborate on how you go through fact checking.
Yes, as I mentioned before, in SLPI we are running a fact checking team, and we are counter the misinformation, disinformation that are circulating in any media daily basis. So we mainly focus on daily news items and some timely cases which can be caused to public interest. The main criteria we are choosing fact check news items for fact checking is public interest. We have other criteria as well, but mainly we are focusing on public interest. The news that have been circulating is how affected to the general public is the main concern of ours. So the item that we revealed as fake, false, mislead, or controversial, we publish them publicly and share with our network. So when it comes to journalists, same time we are working with journalists, engaging them with fact checking and aware them about fact checking. Journalists can direct to us the fake news items that they find while reporting, and they can engage with fact checking process as well. We all agree that there are fake news or misleading, false information circulating through mainstream media as well. The fact checkers reveal many false information carried by mainstream media, intentionally or accidentally. They are circulating false information sometimes. In order to debunking fake news, it will be better train the journalists not to generate mis or disinformation, while we are raising awareness to the general public. But our scope is mainly aware journalists about this fact-checking process and tools. So we started the training programs on fact-checking for journalists who are working in newsroom and provincially. It was they were very happy to know about these particular areas, and we believe that journalists have more potential in fact checking because they are already trained on working with facts. When reporters handle fact carefully, there is only less chance to spread false information on mainstream media. In our trainings for journalists, we mainly focus to build the sense of facts, identify and act on false information. And but the fake news in online media is different scenario. In social media, all are communicators and all are consumers of information. In other hand, most of journalists using social media for their media practices while they working in newsrooms, and we know all the government institutions and other media institutions releasing their media contents to social media as well. So social media is a kind of very big platform for information, and same times it is close to misleading and miscommunication and false information. And we know most of contents which creating mainstream media also available in social media as well. So we focused more technical tools and strategies when we come to fact checking on social media contents. So we try to keep engaging with journalists in fact checking while we are practicing it ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll move on to a few questions. And one of the questions that was posed to us by registered participants originally was, what if someone finds out a post, maybe in social media or news, which they find is inaccurate factually? So especially with social media. Maybe I think this question, we will quickly get some answers. Maybe Harish also and Anisha, like if someone finds something, can they engage you or like as a general public person, so someone who's on social media, can they engage you and post it?
Yes, actually, they can do two things. First of all, they can run simple verification methods, like in case if they have a media in their hand, for example, an image or something, they can go for a simple Google reverse image to find more context about it, or a simple Google search would also help them. And in case if they are not able to find anything, they can flag it to us. We have a WhatsApp helpline number that we can share. So
Okay, maybe you can put it in the chat and I will share it later.
Sure. So you can flag it to us on WhatsApp, you can flag it to us on Messenger, on our Facebook page, and our fact checkers will look into it and they will verify it, and they will get back to you with the right context.
Anisha, can the public engage you on
Yes. So sorry. Yes. So if a statement is made by someone they think qualifies as a high-level decision maker, like an MP or the head of a government institute, they can definitely engage us. Just submit the claim on our website or message us on Facebook. Preferably use the website. If it's not by a high-level decision maker, unfortunately, that's outside of our scope. But I do absolutely recommend that in those cases, they reach out to Crescendo or even try to do something themselves, because as much as fact checkers like us can do, it would be as good, maybe even better, if individuals did those kinds of fact checks on their own. And if they thought maybe this is not true, if they could find sources and then push it to their contacts, if everybody was thinking that way, I think that would be very beneficial and could help stem misinformation to a great extent without just relying on fact checkers, although we are of course happy to do what we can to help.
Just verifying with multiple sources is always a good option. Like for example, if you doubt something, then you can go to some other website and you can check how they have actually reported the news.
Would anyone like to add anything more? Nalaka or Imran?
Yeah. I think Anisha touched on something we should definitely take up as we go on with this discussion. That is the limits of fact checkers. I mean, we've heard from LPI, Crescendo, and Verité fact check. Between them, there are two others that are also we have 5 fact checking services, and yet there are too many pieces of this information for them to deal with and to investigate and to debunk. So it's then up to individual users of information, whether we are mass media consumers, we are social media users. All of us also have to take on some responsibility. Now, I was looking for an analogy to illustrate this. I would like to think that fact checkers are like lifeguards. Now, we know that lifeguards are trained with skills and readiness, and they are placed at various water bodies, swimming pools, and some public beaches, and so on. But everywhere, you can't post lifeguards. So then those who get into water bodies also have to have the safety consciousness, the sense of responsibility. Is this a safe body of water? Is this safe conditions for swimming, and so on? Likewise, everywhere, fact checkers can't be checking and verifying and cautioning or confirming. We need, of course, if there are fact checkers doing the heavy lifting for us, that's good. But we need all of us, all information users, to also have the basic survival skills, basic skepticism. Is this piece of information likely to be true? Can it be trusted? Who is saying it? Where has it come? What kind of process goes into producing this? It may not be self-evident in each case, but ask a few basic questions. So that is the kind of skill that's called media and information literacy, also called digital literacy. That I think is a medium to long-term strategy, while the fact checkers do the first line of defense against lies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to add something. I think the key underlying feature here is about instilling a sense of critical thinking, right? And I think everybody can do that with your own family. You start with your own family, right? 4 or 5 people. Ask them. That's great. I think they are trying to do a lot of fact checking for across the country, but the sheer number to do it is difficult. I think the issue here is to create critical thinking first in your own family, because they when your own family members start reducing the amount of fake information they pass on, then as a society, as a unit, you start being effective. I think that's the first point of call. And the long-term critical thinking, because we have a rote-based education system, right? We just believe something, or we just by heart something. And I think the ability to bring in critical thinking across the education platform will take a long time, but it can be done, and it's a process, right? But within a family context, 4 or 5 people, I think we can play a part there. And there's enough of resources online for an individual to kind of create this critical thinking to kind of filter out information. I myself have educated myself over the last year on how to, filter out so much of information, because I consume a lot of information. And sometimes I find it very difficult, having been, so I think that's what we do. Start with your family, then expand to other social units.
Okay, we'll just take one related question. I'll pose it to Harish, and maybe in that process you can also discuss something. So this particular question was like the impact of what you have done. So like how do you ensure that how do you verify whether that what you have done has been an impact on? Is there some way you can measure, or any challenges in terms of how you want to take the message to?
The thing is that the impact cannot be quantified, but the thing is that we look at the feedbacks that we get, and also we consider the feedbacks, whether good or whether bad. We get good encouraging feedbacks from our readers. We also get some critical feedbacks also, and if in case they have some point, we try to incorporate it in the team from next time. So the thing is that even our work and the kind of recognition that it gets, and also as we were discussing, we were talking about education. So we hold this point at the top of our every fact check. So as per I have seen, transparency of methodology. So if you check any Crescendo article, you'll find that simplest things, simplest tools, for verifying video, verifying photo, and everything is mentioned there very clearly. So sometimes it happens that people we receive a lot of requests on our WhatsApp number. So sometimes people just give us the proof and everything, and they say, "Do fact check on this. What are you doing?" So this is one we consider this as one of the impact that we have had. The people who have been regularly following us have been not only been updated with the right information, but also have been educated in a way that as Imran had put in, they can educate people in their vicinity on how to verify the piece of information that they have. So this is one thing. Then the international recognitions are there. Like I've seen was part of the Datos Alliance for coronavirus, and in the recently conducted Paris Peace Forum, the project was selected, and Crescendo along with Matilda from Spain, another I have seen affiliated fact-checking organization, will be working on the project, in which we will be discussing many ways in which how we can come up with the correct information on on the misinformation that is being disseminated on social media in very less time, and how we can engage different parties, like for example government. There's one small example that we have done, like along with AFP, the Health Promotion Bureau. We had started an initiative during the initial stages of this coronavirus pandemic. So the misinformation that was coming was immediately flagged off, and we got immediate responses from the authentic sources, from the government, from the health department. So it really helped in reducing the amount of misinformation around coronavirus in the initial period, and even after that also it still continues to go in that way. So this is how I can say that this is how we judge the impact of our work. And secondly, challenges. So challenges are plenty in case because of as no, even to elaborate that point, like which Imran had said about educating about the family. But if no, I don't know whether any of you have experienced this. If you talk to your family members about something, and most of the time they won't even believe you. It's because of something called as inherent bias that they are having, especially if you are no, in a conservative background. If you try to convince them, they'll try to convince you otherwise, and it could end up in a fight. So so we have to teach people critical and rational thinking, how to take things in a rational manner. And this is one of the biggest challenges that we face, that the content should be evaluated on the basis of whether it is true or false. But sometimes people judge it through their own perception, and they if it is suiting what they have, suiting their preconceived notions, then it is right. If it is not suiting their preconceived notion, then it is wrong. So this sort of thing always causes impediments in building trust among people, because the thing is that we are more of a content driven guys. We fact check the content, whether the content could be true or it could be false. There is nothing which stands in the middle. So the thing is that we are not saying that a party is false or a person or an individual is false. We are saying that the content is false. So this is one challenge. Then we have technical challenges also, like as because of the transparency of methodology. Now people know how we fact check, how the fact checking techniques are. So the people who are actually disseminating misinformation or disinformation are now creating different ways to evade these kind of methods. So they are getting more and more smarter day by day. They are creating such kind of, for example, images. This is a very simple technique that if you reduce the quality of the image, it becomes very difficult to do a Google reverse image search on that. So it becomes more difficult for fact checker to actually find out the right context in that. So this kind of technical challenges are also present in the work we do.
Nalaka, you want to add something?
Yes, I'm very glad that Harish mentioned this because I was part of a multi-stakeholder alliance in Sri Lanka that did political fact-checking the 3 months running up to our election, general election in early August last year. And one of our learnings was that disinformation creators are becoming increasingly savvy. They are producing more and more sophisticated, more and more devious pieces of disinformation, and some of them are simply unfact checkable because they claim or they draw from what is not in the public domain. They go into not facts but into legend, into belief systems. There's a terrain beyond facts or verifiability. When you cross that threshold and go into that terrain of fiction, conspiracy, and all that, you can't fact check with the frameworks that we have. So politically, increasingly that is happening, and we saw this very clearly in the 10 weeks or so that the network against disinformation, or Truth Square as it was publicly called, we did non-partisan fact-checking or rather monitoring of disinformation. This is because the problem is now getting more complex. So fact checkers, including the 3 represented on this panel, will find it tougher as you go along. When more and more unfact checkable statements are being made of various deities, for example, recommending corona cures and so on. These are not not in the domain of evidence and reason. What do we do with that?
Anisha, I'll move on to you. So basically, I think in your case, you have rather defined scope in terms of what you check. But I think the challenges are more unique than what Harish mentioned. So, like, can you share with us like what challenges you have and how impactful it has been?
Yes. So we do have different challenges because of the way our system works. I honestly would say one of our challenges is the fact that we can't check every single piece of disinformation, partly because the people that we're checking don't necessarily repeat those statements. Occasionally you will get an MP maybe repeating some outlandish claim that people have been making, and then we get to check those statements. But in general, there is a lot of disinformation that goes around that's targeted attacks on communal statements. There are things that are like Nalaka said, just like beyond the realm of checking that we can't really look into. And I would say actually that's a connected thing, because sometimes we get requests to check certain statements where, say, one MP said something about another MP and like what they have said, but we are not really in a place to say, oh, this is true or this is false. Verité also has another platform called EthicsEye that monitors media ethical violations according to a code of media ethics. And so sometimes they can go and do a different kind of check, not really a fact check, but say, oh, they didn't provide sources for this, or go to if it's a statement made about a particular person, then they can go to that person and say, did you say this? And then provide some kind of feedback on that. So for example, I think in the lead up to the presidential election in 2019, some mainstream media papers published like front page articles saying MP Sumandaran said that to defeat the we must vote for Sajid to defeat the Sinhalese or something like that, which is completely baseless. And so we can't go and say, oh, here's some publicly available data that that shows this is false. It's like that's just not within our scope. It's not something we can do. But EthicsEye was able to reach out to MP Sumandaran and see what he had to say, and then show like, no, he never made any kind of statement like this. Okay, so that is one of our challenges, is that we can't check everything. Another challenge, like I mentioned earlier, is that because of the detailed fact checks that we do, it takes a little while. It takes time to do that. And we can't check all of the statements because we just don't have the resources and time to check it. And so sometimes I think we are unable to do checks in time for them to be like, it's too late, the information has spread too far or something like that. And so that's another challenge. Also, again, because of the detail of our checks, one of our challenges is just getting funding for doing them, because our checks are like rigorous and analytical, and that requires resources and a high level of skill. So the people that write these checks are people who have expertise in some field and are able to provide the economic insight or legal insight. And so we have had some funding over the years. Actually, Nalaka's, I don't know if you're still at IMS, but the International Media Support provided some funding for us to start this platform. But beyond that, it's very difficult to get the support that we need for that kind of thing. And then honestly, I would say yet another challenge that we face is sometimes people don't see the value of fact checking. So we'll get we'll publish a fact check, and then we'll get comments saying, oh, what's the purpose of this? And that's especially the case when we publish true fact checks, because people are then like, oh, what's the purpose of saying that it's true? And they don't necessarily see that, like, that's one side of the coin. if we left it without saying it's true, people might not know that it's true. And so that's like a big challenge. And I think one of the things that I don't know if it's something that we can do given, our platform and the scope of our platform, but to provide training to people to think critically, to sort of value knowing whether something is true or not, instead of sort of, as you said, looking at as Harish said, the confirming their own biases, like if it's in line with their beliefs, then they're like, oh, then this must be true. That's to train people to think critically, to give people, some kind of media literacy training in general is important. And, it can start at home, like Imran said, talking to your family. I personally often tell, my older aunt not to just send WhatsApp forwards that, that don't have sources, that just like basic things. That's important, but again, I don't know if that's within our scope as our platform. But it's something that I would like to see in the future. Sorry, got a bit off topic there, but yes.
Yeah, but
Okay,
Anisha is right. Anisha is right, Lasith. I just want to say there is a whole Sri Lankan auntie and uncle network on WhatsApp. Multiple overlapping network where a lot of these disinformation is being shared uncritically. And many of them are educated, professional, or hired people who ought to actually question and don't. What do we do about it?
Yes, I agree with Nalaka. Actually, we have a term in India for that, WhatsApp University. And the people, these aunties and uncles are graduates or PhDs from that university. You ask them any historical thing, they will say that, this happened. And when you'll ask them, where do you read this? Did you read it in some book or something? No, I read it on WhatsApp. See, this came today. So, WhatsApp in Sri Lanka, though it is not that big of a phenomena, but in India in 2018, in 2 months, in a span of 2 months, we had 18 incidents of mob lynching because of WhatsApp rumors, and 36 people had lost their lives.
Okay, I'd like to take that point over Imran. Imran, so in terms of like digital media, are the current set of platforms which operate this media like Facebook and other social media, are they is there a power imbalance between these corporates who own this and the general public?
Absolutely. I think it's very clear that a handful of digital players control access to billions of users, and it's very difficult to pin them down in terms of legal consequences, because obviously they are in another part of the world, in the US, which has this First Amendment freedom, which they use for everything, to get behind everything, and also how do in the modern world, how can actually censor something, because there are plenty of ways, technological loopholes in which to access a platform, even if a country officially bans something, right? And so I think there the power imbalance is that's the bad news. But the good news is that I think a very powerful state actors, right? The US is now looking at regulating some of these digital players, not necessarily the content and how they respond to complaints, but the fact that how they have so much of access, right? So should Facebook also own WhatsApp and Messenger, right? So if there were two different players, at least a competition between the different players would allow some sort of redress to the consumer. Today, you really have no redress. Singapore tried to do this through this law that they brought in, right, to kind of look at falsehoods and stuff like that. How effective that has been is very difficult to say, because while you can ban a website technically, right, there are access again through that. How do you ban Facebook page of an organization, right? And then that's where there is an access in terms of what is the redress process, right? You can write a complaint, which is usually very few of those complaints are seen by human, right? There is some sort of automatic system that looks at it and flags it and says no. And remember, the whole basis of commercialization of these platforms, right, is about creating engagement. Whether that engagement is positive or negative is irrelevant to them. right? They need engagement, and you being engaged on the platform for long as possible, as passionately as possible, right? And that is the whole business model that is driving them. And I think until there is control over that, I don't think there's going to be a redress for the individual that have been impacted by a bigger platform. But governments are on it, right? And we as a small country are going to benefit by the actions of bigger governments. So now France and some other countries have this right to be forgotten, where they're holding platforms like Google accountable for older content that is irrelevant or wrong. And certain members of the European Union are allowed to go and complain against them. Now the thing is, initially what the digital giants have been doing is they've been sectioning off their offering. For example, now in the European Union, you see that because of a new privacy directive that has come in place, they have stopped certain messaging platforms, and they are telling the consumer, we have stopped this for now, or access to this now, to comply with this law. But what they're trying to do is pressurize the governments to kind of go back. But I think that the momentum towards not necessarily regulating, but at least redressing the balance has started, right? And very powerful governments like the US, like the European Union, like Australia, Singapore, people whose actions impact those retail platforms are finally, getting on this. So I think over the next 5 to 10 years, I do see that the imbalance will change between the big retail players and the individual. But at the moment, really, it's biased towards the problem. Because remember, when you had a traditional media, you could actually have a regulatory authority, like for television or for print or for radio, where the spectrum or the license could be cancelled. But I mean, even if how can you cancel Facebook? Because there are ways of accessing it, right? There are digital, loopholes where you can, access banned content. So I think the key is hopefully to put pressure on this company. And the interesting part is what happens in countries like Sri Lanka or Myanmar are being used by governments in their parliamentary hearings against these digital giants. That is why documenting what they're doing and the kind of work that you guys do is critical, because they're using those reports and saying, Facebook, you did this led to WhatsApp led to lynchings in India, Facebook led to action against Rohingya in Myanmar. They're using this in their parliamentary hearing, and that's beautiful, because they're using what you have done in developing countries to hold them to account. So I think at the moment there's imbalance, but I'm quite confident that over the next decade that imbalance will get redressed, because governments are coming to become very powerful. Governments are becoming aware of the impact of these platforms.
Just a word of caution, though. I want to sound, while it is true that the imbalance needs to be addressed and redressed, we as a medium-sized country, we should be looking at how robust democracies are trying to grapple with this problem. Singapore is not a democracy. Singapore does not respect freedom of expression, and it is totally the wrong example for us to be studying, let alone emulate. So I would sound a word of caution there, and also how to engage the platforms. Going by the European countries as well as the Union, to me, look at Canada, look at mature democracies, how they are trying to engage and bring in some sort of a balance. But this is a whole another topic that hopefully ISOC will host a debate on.
Yeah, just to add something, Nalaka, I completely agree with you. Actually, we should be only looking at democratic countries and their models. I'm just saying that Singapore had a law. And I just want to add one more thing, how ineffective it was. So it was bought just before an election, the last election that was held in August this year, right? So hoping that they could control the narrative. But if you look at the election results, which I watched personally, right? The People's Action Party had the least amount of seats since the founding of Singapore, right? Irrespective of this internet law. So it was completely ineffective, but I just want to add that they have a law. It doesn't mean we should follow it. I am much more in favor of the European Union, because they are able to balance both, innovation and democracy and human rights. And I love the European Union, where they are the pioneers in terms of trying to balance this carefully.
Okay, I quickly like to move to Kasun. I think in your case, the challenges again are a bit unique than what Anisha and Harish mentioned. So, as how do you see your work with the journalists and the training, and what do you need to strengthen the fact checking at SLPI?
The engagement of the journalists who are working with us on fact checking is satisfactory at the moment. They were enthusiastic for exploring new tools and new ways and methods they can use for fact checking, and they have been engaged with us continuously to overcome our objectives and debunking fake news. Other than that, when we practice fact checking, we had faced some challenges. Most of them are as Harish and Anisha raised same concerns. The one-off challenge that we faced within this short time of period was engaging with the general public. That Anisha also raised that matter. It was quite challengeable. For example, we did not found much general public engagement for the checked contents, and one of our observation was the harm of false information is difficult to recover. It's mean when someone circulate false information purposely or accidentally, the harm of this fake news generated cannot be recovered. Maybe it can be related to health, it can be related to political situations, but anyhow the damage has been already gone so far, because the false information is spreading very fast and it is hitting people's mind very quickly. Sometimes the idea that generate on people's mind could not change, although we as fact checkers revealed it as fake or misleading or something. It was the main challenge we have faced, and in Sri Lanka we facing trouble to access information, especially government related scenarios. Although we have a Right to Information Act, still some information have not made public by public authorities. To access those information through inquiries or any other way, it is taking some time. So it can be quite challengeable. I think in Sri Lanka, all the fact checkers have that challenge. And sometimes it's the process of the fact checking. It takes some time to verify the information because the officials ignoring providing any statements as the facts are controversial or they are hiding is because of the influence of their hierarchy or something. This is primary issues, but sometimes unavoidable. Those were some challenge we faced in the fact-checking practices. Hopefully, we could be able to overcome this challenge together in future.
Okay, thanks, Kasun. So we have one question related to this. I'll ask this question. Basically, I'll post this question on Nalaka. Well, apart from if you look at the current context, okay, we have fact-checking institutions, and I mean, as you said, it's come a long way from where it was in a couple of years back. But if you look at the current situation, are there any gaps in terms of this fact-checking space, not as just fact-checkers, but in the whole ecosystem? Are there any other entities that you think should be installed, or let's say, any other task that has to be in place for as a community to be having a more healthy system of misinformation free news?
Yes, yes, I believe there are at the information ecosystem level. One of the frustrations that I have watching all the good and hard work that our fact checkers, all our fact checking entities do, is that they actually have a limited reach compared to the original lies that they are trying to counter, lies or deception or distortions they are trying to counter. The fact checks don't gain the same level of visibility, attention, sharing if it's on social media. So reach, how to increase that reach is one remaining challenge, a gap that needs to be addressed urgently. Then the other thing is scope. We have fact checkers that are doing chosen specific kinds of fact checking, and all that is good and necessary, but it's not sufficient. How do we mobilize others with enough training or enough access to verification processes to also become fact checkers? Like, how do we, for example, school teachers, university teachers, university undergraduates, can we slowly motivate these to become fact checkers themselves on behalf of their various communities and families and respective circles of influence? Because in the end, fact checking or moving towards a fact based, evidence based society is something that needs a lot more than just fact checking entities. The other question that all fact checkers, professional fact checkers face, is a question of resources. So, where can funding and technical support come from? Can corporate social responsibility efforts go into strengthening and supporting fact checking? Can development funders, development donors consider this to be a priority? So these are the gaps that I see. In addition to simply moving from a culture of believing whatever that comes our way, or suspending our disbelief, is another way of describing. We go to movies, we suspend our disbelief for an hour or two and enjoy a piece of fiction, make believe, a tale of make believe. But we seem, or some of us, many of us in Sri Lankan society, seem to have suspended their disbelief permanently. We need to wake up from that. We need to awaken our society from this state of being gullible, being easy to fool, and turn them into more critical consumers of information. We need teachers, we need other enlightened people, other concerned people to lead this charge along with the fact checkers.
Okay, so since we were basically come to the end, and I've been so while I think we've gone through most of this. One last question which I would like to pose. Well, what are the laws in Sri Lanka related to false information? This was a post which someone had participant has posted on the when we during the registration time. Or is there a legal any sort of protection against misinformation being flowing? Would anyone in the panel like to comment? Imran, or
I'll have a go at it. Others can perhaps add to it. It is not possible to, in my view, it is not possible to legislate against disinformation because it's a vast and variable phenomenon. And if a government tries to legislate against disinformation, there is a real danger of it actually restricting free expression, free speech. So we have to be very careful. But in specific instances, whether it's to do with epidemics in public health or in terms of defamation, libel, specific lies that do harm to individuals or situations can be identified and prosecuted either under criminal law or civil law. I'm not a lawyer, but from the legal conversations I've had with lawyers. But those are specific. But overarching, getting a blanket law against disinformation, I would caution against it, because in a country where rule of law is not well established, in a country where the law enforcement is not self-mature, such a law against disinformation can be very easily misused against critics of the government, against the critics of the establishment, and it can lead to a lot of misuse. So be careful in what we wish for and what we ask for.
Okay, so thank you, Nal. Not anything to add? Yeah. Okay.
I think there are plenty of laws in terms of the Computer Crimes Act and so many different things where a particular device or something has been used to send out things. But I think I agree with Nalaka. I think we are on a very slippery slope if you get to the point where there's selective prosecuting, and which we have seen this year, right? The ICPR has been selectively used. Then what happens is people lose trust in why that particular law was brought into place, right? And then therefore the whole institution is a problem. And I think there are enough laws in Sri Lanka if you want to find a way to prosecute somebody, and we have seen that happen. So I think I agree with Nalaka. Even though it's on certificate, very careful on this. The better thing is to inculcate a culture of critical thinking. For me, that is the solution to many of our problems, because no law or no amount of thing can do that. Just to add to something that Harish said, I'm very conscious of my family being split, right? So what I do is I don't have arguments about specific facts. I tell them this is the process, and you can do whatever you want. So what I've noticed initially is that the process was not followed, right? And they still believe what they want in terms of being this thing. But over time, as the deluge of information kept coming, they also began to suspect that maybe some of this is wrong, and started to follow the process, which I find very heartening.
Okay, so with that, I think we'll just come on to the conclusion. Basically, before we end our webinar, I think we've gone through most of the questions that were there. If there are any other questions, we might get our resource panelists to answer them later and on our chat. But I'd like to then move on to each of our panelists for their final concluding thoughts, maybe in 1 minute, starting with Harish, with you.
Again, on behalf of Crescendo, I would like to thank you for organizing this wonderful event, and all the panelists. It was really insightful, the kind of interaction we had. We discussed a lot of problems that we face. It is a great challenge of resources also for the fact checkers, and also to make a model that is based on a more engaging content. Means it's always a challenge that how you're going to make fact checking more interesting. You're not making a Bollywood song that is going to get 2.5 million views in just a matter of minutes. So there are things. There is more scope of discussions on that. But this is a very good confluence of ideas from different fact checkers in Sri Lanka, and I hope the audience might have got great insights into how to identify disinformation. In case if they identify one, then what to do it, how to verify it, and also idea about the different parties that are striving day and night, like Verité, like Sri Lanka Press Institute, like Crescendo, who are trying to keep the social media sphere in Sri Lanka free from disinformation. Again, it was a great discussion about the limitations of fact checks, very well put out by Nalaka and Anisha, that now everything cannot be fact checked. We have certain things like eligible for fact check, not eligible for fact check. What is a satire? What is a opinion? People use satire to spread misinformation. So the kind of the new generation of fake news peddlers that are coming up, who are now using these loopholes to do their work. So it has been a very productive discussion, in my opinion, and I hope we'll have more of this in the coming future.
Okay, thank you very much, Harish. Nalaka, over to you.
Okay. We all know about April Fool's Day. April 1st in many societies and cultures is observed as April Fool's Day. And on that day, all of us are on extra guard, because somebody might try to fool us with a lie. And we don't want to be an April Fool. now we have reached a situation, I think, where every day we have to be on our guard. Every day we have to think through, question, could this be true? Am I being fooled? Am I being tricked into believing this and sharing it? So the practical piece of advice I want to leave you with is think of every day as April Fool's Day. Take the precautions every day and don't be a spreader or super spreader of misinformation. Let us be part of the solution. Let us try to address and tackle this growing scourge of disinformation. And also, at a more philosophical level, I think Sri Lanka as a society needs to ask and answer this question: do we want to move on, evolve to be a society that demands and respects evidence more so than we are now? Because right now we are a lot of opinions, a lot of biases and prejudices rather than being fact-based or evidence-based. From where we are, how can we evolve to be a more evidence-using, evidence-demanding, evidence-driven kind of society? And in that process, can we also be ready to confront inconvenient truths that go against our beliefs, that are counterintuitive, and not just dwell on comforting life? So this is the big societal challenge at a bigger picture level that I see. But start by treating every day as April Fool's and being careful.
Okay. That interesting thought about and what you said. That was an interesting thing to make about the April Fool's Day. Yeah, I think that's a good way to communicate this to the general public. Imran, your concluding remarks?
Yeah, I'm very hopeful because I believe that a counter narrative can be waged against fake or dishonest information, and we can go towards winning it. I'll give a very quick example, right? In Ireland, they had one of the greatest discoveries I feel in the last 30 40 years is the vaccine against HPV, which is a cancer that affects women. Right, once the vaccine came, Ireland had a very high rate of acceptance of vaccine, just like Sri Lanka does, and vaccination rates are very high. And then there was this campaign, showing out fake information around its impact on certain young women, etc., etc. Then the vaccination rates dropped dramatically, and then there was this one lady who had HPV. She got cancer, right, from HPV. And she started on her own a counter narrative, right, saying, I wish this vaccine was there when I had it, when I first got it. My life was wasted. She documented her whole life until her death at the age of 26, right? And then again, that had a massive social movement within Ireland. And then, the vaccination rates have gone up again for HPV, which is an amazing thing. So what I want to say is Sri Lanka also has a high rate of vaccination acceptance so far. We have a high rate of literacy. And I think that, with the right kind of narrative and the right kind of counter narrative, I think we can overcome this over a period of time. And I'm very hopeful for this country, and that we can do that.
Okay. Anisha, your concluding remarks?
Yeah, thank you for including me in this very interesting discussion. I hope that we have given people some insight into kind of the importance of fact checking, but also the challenges we face and what people can do to sort of stem the tide of disinformation, and what people can do to make sure to help us and to help us help them. And I think both everyone has already kind of talked about, has given advice on what to do and what we need. And we need to develop a culture of sort of skepticism and critical thinking. And I hope that that's everyone's big takeaway. And also hope, like Imran said.
Okay, so over to Kasun for final remarks. Kasun? Hello. Kasun, can you hear us? Your concluding remarks? Sorry.
Yes, I think it is very fruitful discussion for all of us because, and yes, you can hear me, no?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello. Yes, I can hear you. Can you? Can you hear me?
I think you are on a little.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. You are lagging bit a bit, I think. That's okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Yes.
Yes. Okay. At the end of the discussion, I think there is little raining outside. I think the connection is getting slower. So I think the discussion was very fruitful for all of our visitors and for us also, because we shared our experiences and our challenges and what is our objective in the futures and all. So I would like to thank Internet Society of Sri Lanka chapter, and I wish you all the best for your new initiative also. And as Mr. Nalaka said, I would like to invite all of the viewers to become a fact checker. We are always there for as SLPI. We are doing trainings, fact-checking training for public also. So we successfully trained 100 youth participant fact-checkers in last month also. So in future you can join with our programs as well. So we invite all of you to become a fact checker and be aware, be updated, and debunk fake news. Thank you.
Okay, I think Kasun, thank you, Kasun. I think what the final message you just mentioned about the training you provide. I think that's something we also think with our thoughts. We want to create a community of our next generation to be with the values and attitude towards looking at news and to manage to get the fact and the fact clear from false. So and also moving ahead. So this is actually the first of our series of webinars that we are conducting, and I'd like to just go to one topic that Nalaka mentioned in his initial the round about infodemics. Actually, what we plan in one of our subsequent webinars, we actually want to get in health or medical specialists who are actually at the forefront of managing infodemics, who have actually got the support of World Health Organization. And we hope to actually engage with the medical professionals to ensure that this message actually gets through to the wider medical community as well as the general public. So with that, so we look forward to our audience joining us on those webinars. You can follow our Suwathathu for Health Fact Check Facebook page as well as the YouTube channel for updates. And at the end of, so before we conclude, it's my duty to appreciate and greatly acknowledge our panelists today, Mr. Harish Nair, Managing Editor for Crescendo India, and Mr. Gunawardene, Media and Commentator, Ms. Anisha as Bandaranaike, Assistant Analyst at Verité Research, Mr. Imran Furkan, Independent Media Commentator and CEO of Tresync Australia, and Mr. Kasun Kumarage, Team Lead FactSeeker at the Sri Lanka Press Institute. So behind the scene, actually, we also had a number of our ISOP members supporting on this activity. So Dr. Rasika Daratna, Mr. Lasith Nuwanwala, Mr. Prabhasar Atrupan, and Ms. Lakshma Prabhani have been working behind the scene to ensure that this webinar goes on place. And we hope everyone else joins us in the future webinars. So thank you once again for everyone who's joined us and our panelists. And we hope everyone has a pleasant evening.
Thank you.